Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Peter Gregory. I'm Executive Director of the Rivers-Ottauquechee Regional Commission. I'm really speaking for that commission, not all the 11 regional planning commissions. As you might imagine, there are always nuances to every issue. I want to thank the committee for having me here today and for the work you've done last year and the work you're doing this year. This is very important work, obviously. It reminds me about when I tell my own board and my own staff about the pace of change in our lives, whether it's technology or healthcare or the economy or the environment, and how in my profession I'm supposed to anticipate and be ready for each one of these changes. And I've probably never felt more inadequate about being able to anticipate what we have to do. But having said that, we need to try, and I know you're trying. And I think change is difficult for all of us, but I hope that you have the courage to make some changes, and without all the answers, because we never have all the answers, and there's always a chance to adapt and change as we try new things. So having said that, I'll cut right to the chase. I was asked to talk a little bit about the Enhanced Natural Resources Board proposal, and with modifications, I've come to support that. It was certainly a bold idea when I first heard about it. I think the modifications that most of us in regional planning think would be helpful would have the regional folks on this board have full participation rights in voting. I think having second-class citizens on any kind of panel is just not a good way to do things. I've done second class on some myself, and it's not all that good. I think a companion part of this proposal that I think is important is having kind of pre-application meetings on majors, perhaps very informal, having all statutory parties, citizens, neighbors able to come and provide input to the applicant ahead of time, have a summary report, not a legal record or anything like that, but just a summary report prepared by the district coordinator, submitted to the NRB, which summarizes local input that you might not get in a more formal proceeding before the Enhanced Natural Resources Board. Many years ago, I worked in Florida in project review at the regional level, and there was a requirement for pre-application hearings. It was more formalized, but it was able to articulate and document a lot of the issues that applicants needed to address before coming into the process formally. It also gave municipalities a chance to hear that. Sometimes there was local zoning that had to go concurrently, just like in Vermont. And in Vermont, they happen independently of one another, so there's always that kind of conflict where one goes first and then has to be backpedal and redesign and stuff. So I think a mandatory pre-application meeting, informal, would be useful to complement those 40 plus that would go to the Enhanced Natural Resources Board. So I don't know if you have any questions on why I think that's right, or any more than that.
Why do you think that's right?
I anticipated that a little bit. I like the idea of having a professional board that, and I like the way it's set up for the selection of the individuals, the expertise that they have, the consistency in their decision making. I don't fear that. I actually relish that. I think that's a good thing. The 3 members being there. I think the 2 that can vote from the regional level can interject maybe some historical knowledge on things in the region. But I think it's worthy of giving this a chance. Two Rivers has been involved in some very contested cases over the years. The environmental court process has not worked well for us. I think, as I talked about earlier, we try some things, see how it works. I don't think that worked well, and I think I feel that this is a better way to go.
There were a couple hands up. Matt.
I believe you mentioned in the beginning of your testimony that regional commissions, possible voting rights. Did you?
The regional members.
Can you explain, or can you kind of expand on that a little more and just talk about how that would benefit the process as far as clarity and access, public access, things like that?
Well, as I understand it, the regional members would still be able to participate in all the discussions and deliberations and things like that, I think it would send a message that their participation is real and meaningful. I mean, at least that's how I perceive it.
Representative Lefebvre.
Why wouldn't you give them a vote?
Why would I?
Why wouldn't you?
I would give them a vote.
So it'd be 5 votes taken.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. And the other question I was gonna ask you is this pre-application meeting before anything is really set in motion. Is that now more or less found a lot of traction? I mean, I know it came about as a result of the siting of energy projects. And it seems more and more people now, has considered that a very good idea to see what the problems might be before you go forward. And I'm just wondering, is that kind of in the works now? Is someone in your capacity might?
Well, it's not mandated, it's not formalized in any way, but given the way that my board has written our regional plan and how useful it's been in the process, more and more applicants are seeking us out on their own to see how their projects, are in conformance. So, word of mouth.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. It absolutely does.
Trevor.
A question about district commissions and the joint proposal basically saying we're going to go from 9 to 6. Do you have thoughts about either one of those options?
I really don't. I mean, the local control person in me says, 9, but, we have, smaller public safety districts and we still have public safety around the state. So that's not a big issue for me. I haven't thought about it too much.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. The joint proposal puts a fair amount of changes to the planning sections of the bill into a study, and I'm wondering what you think about that, and if that's
Like the regional review of the independent review of regional plans. Is that one of those?
that's one of those things.
One of those.
A number of the planning
Capacity.
are there, yeah. Looking at the capability development plan
Right.
as a study, as opposed to just saying this is legislative intent.
There's quite a bit of difference of opinion among my colleagues on the independent review of regional plans. All of them agree that that's needed. The body that actually does that independent review is the thing that is a sticking point for among us right now. I tend to think that having a natural resources board type organization with a little bit more planning expertise within it could be that entity. It could be a subset of the Enhanced Natural Resources Board with a couple of state agencies, secretaries or their designees, and maybe an RPC director. I don't want it just to be RPC directors or anything like that. It's got to be truly independent. And as long as the focus of the review is narrow like it is for RPCs with town plans, i.e. Is there consistency with the goals of 4302? Does it have all the structural requirements of the plans and the content that the statutes required in each chapter? That's what we do with towns, and that's what should happen with regions.
And then, what about the interstate interchange proposal?
Yeah.
And approving of that seems, yeah.
Well, we were involved years ago in helping the state government with the design guidelines, as I think you know. Within that, I like the idea of having each interchange categorized, because they are all different, as you know. Our regional plan at the Two Rivers Regional Commission did just that. We have a lot of interchanges, but we don't call them interchanges with a separate interchange land use area, because some of them are like Sharon, they just dump right into a village. Some of them are raw land with a lot of development pressure. But Two Rivers plan is blessed or cursed, depending on your position, with a strong prohibition of principal retail outside of villages and downtowns. I mean, it's a prohibition. And that includes interstate interchanges. We view those that are undeveloped and not dumping into villages as a statewide resource because of their use in moving commerce and being the gateway to the state. So we've taken a pretty strong stand on those, and quite frankly, I would hope that whatever is done on that does not cause us to backtrack on what we have in our regional plan, because I try to be humble here, but I think it's done a pretty good job on the interchanges.
How many interchanges do you have?
It's a draft right now, but we probably have about, well, we have, I think, like 13 of them overall, but I think we've only categorized about 6 of them that are really vulnerable to, you know, the sprawl and retail and stuff like that. But with our prohibition on that, we're covered. But we deal with, you know, access management and those kinds of things in those areas.
So did you look at the criteria that are proposed in the joint? Did you help them? I mean, are you familiar? Where did they come from? You like where? I'm trying to find out where they came from.
Quite frankly, I would defer to others on where they came from. I mean, they sound pretty good. I mean, those are the things certainly that we deal with, and certainly those are the things that the regional planning commissions can be tasked with doing. I tend to prefer that the state invest more effort in strengthening local and regional planning, especially regional planning, in dealing with mapping issues, in dealing with interchange issues. It's tough, it's very political, but having worked in Florida, you know, I've got a little top-down philosophy and stuff that doesn't always mesh well here, but I think on some of these statewide issues, we've gone as far as we can on a voluntary basis. We need to step up our game.
So that gets me to one more thought on the capability and development plan and the mapping.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the, that's one of those areas where the joint proposal, I think, studies the mapping, that we sort of say, we set forward a process for creating the maps.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, having a set A&R atlas of, like, these are the resources that you consider when you're reviewing an Act 250, that would actually really inform, depending on, no matter what kind of proposal we take on the board structure, it would help district commissions make consistent decisions if they're all using the same information.
Mm-hmm.
So I see us being ready to do that, and I guess I'm wondering about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think having that statewide standard set sooner rather than later is useful. I think it would help inform regional planning as well, and local planning. And I think would get us further down the road faster than a study.
Catching
Hello.
I just wanted one step backwards when we were just talking about the interchanges, and you talked about how your regional plan has recognizes you have different types of interchanges, where some with your villages have grown up in near these interchanges, where where the village came first. So how does your outright ban have an impact on those cases where you have your villages and commercial areas in those villages and multiple different land uses that are more development related? How would they be affected
Well, hopefully
with
not.
your outright ban? Or do you acknowledge that
Absolutely.
there are exceptions, or you manage them differently?
Yes,
than-
we have hamlets, we have villages, we have town centers and growth centers, different gradations of settlement areas, and within those settlement areas, all uses are encouraged at high densities, whatever infrastructure can support water, sewer. So there's no conflict with the prohibition on retail in any village or downtown.
Great, thank you for that clarity.
Further questions for Peter?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time.